Have you ever heard the saying, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory? Well, today we re-diving into one of history's most dramatic examples of this. The Battle of Uhud. This wasn't just a clash of swords and shields. It was a profound lesson in strategy, discipline, and faith that echoes through the ages. It's a story where a battle, seemingly won, was turned on its head by a single, crucial mistake. So let's set the scene. The year is 625 AD, just 1 year after the Muslims, led by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had achieved a stunning and unexpected victory at the Battle of Badr. The powerful Quraysh tribe of Mecca, who were the dominant force in Arabia, were humiliated. They had lost many of their leaders, and their pride was deeply wounded. They weren't just going to let it slide. They were burning for revenge. The Quraysh began to assemble a formidable army. We're talking about 3,000 soldiers, a force 3 times larger than the one they fielded at Badr, including a heavy cavalry of 200 horsemen. Their goal was simple: march to Medina, the new home of the Muslims, and crush them once and for all. Their leader was Abu Sufyan, a cunning strategist, and alongside him was a military genius who would later become one of Islam's greatest heroes, but at this time was fighting against the Muslims, Khalid ibn al-Walid. News of this massive army reached Medina, and the Muslims had a critical decision to make. Should they stay within the fortified city and fight a defensive battle, or march out and meet the Quraysh in open combat? The Prophet Muhammad and the older, more experienced companions favored staying in Medina. But the younger, more zealous Muslims, many of whom had missed the glory of Badr, were eager to prove their courage. They argued passionately for meeting the enemy head-on. In the spirit of consultation, the Prophet listened to the majority and agreed to march out. The Muslim army numbered around 1,000 men, but on the way to the battlefield, about 300 of them, led by Abdullah ibn Ubay, deserted and turned back to Medina. This was a significant blow, leaving the Muslims with only 700 men to face an army more than 4 times their size. But despite being heavily outnumbered, their spirits were high, fueled by their faith and the leadership of the Prophet. The chosen battlefield was the plain beneath Mount Uhud, a rocky hill just outside Medina. The Prophet, a master strategist, surveyed the terrain and identified a critical weak point. There was a small hill called Jabal al-Rama, or the Hill of Archers, that overlooked the battlefield. An enemy cavalry could potentially use a pass around this hill to flank the Muslim army from the rear. To guard this vital position, the Prophet handpicked 50 of his best archers. He gave them one of the clearest and most absolute commands in military history. He told their leader, "Stay at your posts, protect our backs. If you see us winning and collecting spoils, do not join us. And if you see us losing, do not come to our aid. Do not leave this spot for any reason until you receive a direct order from me." This instruction was unequivocal. Their job was to hold that hill, no matter what. As the battle began, the Muslims had the upper hand. Their smaller, more agile force fought with incredible bravery and conviction. The Quraysh lines began to crumble under the ferocity of the Muslim attack. Key figures like Hamza ibn Abd al-Muttalib, the Prophet's uncle, known as the Lion of God, fought valiantly, striking fear into the hearts of the enemy. It looked like a repeat of Badr was on the horizon. The Quraysh army started to flee, leaving their camp, valuables, and supplies behind. Victory seemed certain, and this is where the story takes its turn. Seeing the Quraysh army in full retreat and their camp ripe for the taking, most of the archers on the hill forgot their orders. They saw their fellow Muslims gathering the spoils of war down on the plain. They thought the battle was over. Their commander reminded them of the Prophet's strict command, but about 40 of them couldn't resist the temptation. The battle is won. Why should we stay here while the spoils are being divided? They argued. They abandoned their post and rushed down the hill to join the others. Watching from the flank was the brilliant military mind Khalid ibn al-Walid. He had been waiting, patiently looking for an opening. The moment the archers left the hill, he saw his chance. It was the tactical blunder he had been hoping for. With lightning speed, he led his cavalry squadron around the no-one defended pass, overwhelmed the few remaining archers, and slammed into the rear of the Muslim army. The effect was devastating. The Muslims, who were busy celebrating their apparent victory, were caught completely by surprise. Their lines were broken, and what was a moment of triumph instantly turned into chaos and confusion. Friends began fighting friends in the pandemonium. The tide of the battle had not just turned, it had become a tidal wave crashing down on them. In the midst of this chaos, the Quraysh forces regrouped and launched a ferocious counterattack. Their primary target was the Prophet Muhammad himself. He was surrounded and attacked, sustaining serious injuries. He was struck in the face, losing a tooth, and his helmet was smashed, driving its rings into his cheek. A rumor quickly spread like wildfire through the battlefield. The Prophet has been killed. This news shattered the morale of many Muslim soldiers. For them, the Prophet was everything. Hearing he was gone, some dropped their weapons in despair, feeling all was lost. It was a moment of supreme test. But a few brave companions, like Anas ibn al-Nad, rallied the others, shouting, "What will you do with your lives after he is gone? Fight for the cause for which he fought, and die for the cause for which he died." They formed a protective ring around the injured Prophet, fighting off a wave of attacks and suffering many casualties to protect him. Eventually, the Muslims managed to fight their way out of the encirclement and began a strategic retreat up the slopes of Mount Uhud. The terrain was difficult for the Quraysh cavalry to navigate, giving the Muslims a defensive advantage. From the mountain, they were able to fend off further attacks. Abu Sufyan, the Quraysh leader, stood at the foot of the mountain and taunted the Muslims, declaring victory for his idols. But he knew his army was also exhausted and had suffered losses. He decided not to press the attack on Medina itself, and the Quraysh army eventually withdrew, heading back to Mecca. The battle was over. The Muslims descended from the mountain to a scene of sorrow. They had lost around 70 of their best men, including the beloved Hamza. The Prophet and the survivors were heartbroken. They had been so close to a decisive victory, only to have it slip through their fingers. In the aftermath, there was deep reflection. The Quranic verses revealed after Uhud didn't just offer condolences, they provided a powerful analysis of what went wrong. The message was clear: victory and defeat are from God, but they are also tied to human actions. The setback was a direct result of disobedience and a lapse in discipline. The archers' desire for worldly gain, the spoils of war, led them to disobey a clear and critical command, which in turn led to a catastrophe. The Battle of Uhud stands as a timeless lesson. It's not just a story for Muslims, but for everyone. It teaches us about the critical importance of discipline, unity, and staying true to a mission, even when victory seems assured. It highlights the dangers of greed and materialism, and how a moment of weakness can undo tremendous effort. It shows that even in moments of apparent defeat, there can be profound lessons that lead to greater strength and wisdom in the long run. The experience at Uhud forged the Muslim community, teaching them a lesson in obedience and patience that they would never forget, and which would ultimately pave the way for their future successes. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most important victories are the lessons learned from our losses. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story insightful, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more lessons from history. Let me know your thoughts on the Battle of Uhud in the comments below. See you in the next one.